It's time for an unscheduled off-world activation. Welcome along. This is Trev Retro with some exciting news. Now, yesterday on Twitter, I was really excited. There was some fantastic news, and that news came in the form of a tweet from Joseph Malozzi, aka Baron Destructo, over on X, and it reads, Stargate returns. Now, this just totally blew me away. Yes, it's true. 14 years after the franchise aired its last episode, SGU's Gauntlet, a new Stargate series has been greenlit by Amazon. And it's not a reboot or a wholesale reimagining that will wipe the slate clean on 17 seasons and some 350 hours of Stargate history. It's a new series that will be the perfect jumping on point for first-time viewers, while at the same time honoring the existing past. Now, that to me sounds really good. I like the sound of that. That's fantastic. Hello to everybody joining me in the chat tonight to sort in the storm, and also the oldest gamer, and everybody else who might be joining in too, watching on the re-rub. Now he says, continues, and the reason for that is because this new series was created by longtime franchise veteran Martin Gero, who worked on SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe, writing such notable fan favorites as The Storm, which is a great show, The Eye, Duet, First Strike, and Be All My Sins Remembered, and many more too. Joining the production of the new series is Brad Wright. Oh, so that's good news straight away. Co-creator and co-showrunner of all that came before, like Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. Martin has kindly offered yours truly a role on the project as well, and I've happily accepted, which is just fantastic news. I'm over the moon about this, to be fair. Martin has been developing this show for a while now. A little over a year ago, he reached out and asked, want to read something cool? That something, it turned out, was his pilot script for the new Stargate series. Now, I obviously can't say too much about the content at this point, but I can assure you that it embraces everything that made the original Stargate so great. Heart, humor, rich mythology, exploration, action, adventure, compelling and endearing characters, and that overall sense of optimism and fun that made you fall in love with the Stargate. You're all in for a treat. Eventually, it says. Sword in the Storm says, is this Amazon? Yes, it is. It's over on Amazon. So he continues, now putting this production together is going to take some time. Even though Martin has already done a lot of the preliminary heavy lifting, writing the pilot script and series overview that details the show, its world and characters, as well as his plans for the first season and beyond. Between now and the series premiere, somewhere down the line, the writer's room must be assembled, stories need to be spun, scripts written, prep started, crew hired, actors cast, and eventually a new Stargate series produced. It will take a while, but Martin shares my philosophy when it comes to dialing in the fandom, so I expect to receive updates throughout the prep, production, and post-process. Concept art, behind-the-scenes photos, videos, and insights, breaking news, and much more. Get ready. We're heading through the gate one more time. And it says Chevron 8 is locked. And an interesting picture there. From Deadline, it says Stargate TV series from Martin Gero based on Sci-Fi franchise ordered by Amazon. This, to me, sounds fantastic. Now, in the chat, a gamer says, Wright and Malozzi negate any concerns I have. And that's true. He also says, I have thoughts on where this is going and could go to. But Sword in the Storm, pessimistic as ever, says that worries me no matter who is involved. Why is that? What is it about this that puts you off? Is it because it's on Amazon? I would have thought, now that Amazon owns everything MGM and all the IPs involved, wouldn't it give, the creators of a new Stargate show a lot more latitude to do things that they wanted to do. They're perhaps not as limited by, you know, budgetary restraints and concerns from suits. Yes, I know there's been some controversy in the past, like the Lord of the Rings TV series and the like. They've had quite a few misses. So maybe it's the time that they actually got themselves a hit. Cartoon Man 154 says it could be worse. It could be Netflix. And you know something? You're right. It could be. Sword in the Storm says it's just the state of modern sci-fi that makes me fear. No, I don't know. I think this is going to be in good hands. Just looking back, just before we go any further, this is funny because it says Chevron 8 is logged. There's always one smartass. So the spoiler of this post is they will be traveling to an 8-digit systems instead of 7. And do you know, this is the best response ever. Not really. Joseph Malozzi says, not really. It's just generally positive stuff coming back at Joseph Malozzi here. Joseph Brown says, this is the most exciting news I've heard in a long time. Can't wait. Let me know if you need any bald extras. I like that. I like that. You've got to have that bit of optimism, Gamer says, the limitations of the Sci-Fi channel are no longer in place. I agree there. Bigger budgets, more possibilities. And yes, you're quite right, Gamer. Malozzi says, this is not a hint. It's not. Sword in the Storm carries on saying, I remember in the later series when they would have the massive invasions and space battles happen off screen. Yeah, that was very few and far between. What we did get in terms of space battles and the like was really, really quality. When they did do something, it really did count. And I like that. They really went out on the final season 10, wasn't it, of Stargate SG-1. But even though the Ori story wasn't completed, we had the 2 made-for-TV movies, which wrapped up a hell of a lot of loose ends, to be fair. You got the conclusion of the Ori War, where Adria was finally defeated by Morgan Le Fay, of all people, if you remember that. We also got the conclusion of the Baal storyline with Continuum, which I thought was it was sublime. Just going on to Ark of the Truth, one of the best scenes in that film was where they took, it wasn't Prometheus, was it? Oh, or was it? No, not Prometheus. What am I on about? One of the ships, it might have been the Apollo, one of the Daedalus class ships. They took it through the Ori Supergate, didn't they, into the Ori galaxy. And there was that scene where the ship went through the event horizon of the puddle. And they more or less did that recreation of Daniel Jackson going through the Stargate in the movie, and when he was played by James Spader. They had the sort of like effect of him going through and he being dematerialized and going through the gate. I thought that was outstanding, What's this? Let's carry on with the chat. Sword in the Storm says, betting we won't get a 24-episode season. Possibly not, most of these shows now, they get anywhere between 6 and 8 on a limited run. But it just depends where they're going. What's Martin Jarrow got in mind? It must be something worthy. If this has been greenlit by Amazon, there's got to be some worth behind it, There's got to be something to it. Gamer says, Ori battle and Anubis invasion of Earth were great. Yes, it was. The Anubis battle over Antarctica. And there was a bit of a setup there, wasn't there, for later seasons where they brought Cam Mitchell in. It always makes me laugh that. Where you've got Jup and Tanat, where, was it Prometheus Unbound? Where Daniel Jackson goes on that planet when he meets Vala for the first time. And he goes to drop off some purchase some weapons-grade Naquita. Do you remember that? And they said, who are you? And he went, Olo. Hans Olo. And Jupp and Tanner made a bit of a return, didn't they, in the last season? where Cam Mitchell kind of took him out towards the end, put him against the Lucian Alliance, if you remember. Gamer also says, and I agree with this, Arc of Truth is a great rewatch. It is. Oh, it was the Odyssey, Trev. Yes, now I remember now. Yes, the Odyssey. That was great. Sword in the Storm continuously says it's been a long time since I watched Stargate. I regret getting rid of my DVD. Yeah, physical media. Come on. That's where it's at now. All these streaming services have got everybody over a barrel. You know, it's pay or fuck off, basically, to put it bluntly. But if you've got the physical media, hey ho, away you go. You can watch it at your pleasure. I'm lucky enough to have several box sets. I go round the charity shops quite often, to be fair. Every now and again, you can drop lucky and pick up a complete box set of Stargate SG-1 or Atlantis for like £1. Come on, you can't beat that for value. Gamer says 10 to 12 would be better. This is regarding episodes. Would be better for episodic television. It's better than short runs. It is true. This whole thing about having 10 episodes, like a season, and you're basically telling it's a 10-hour film. You know, like what they did with Picard. It would be nice if this new season, series even, had like weekly episodic, shows. But you've also got like a current, like an arc, what runs across the entire season, where you finally get some conclusion. Obviously, with your last episode of that season, gives you that ideal cliffhanger and stepping stone into getting a second season. Sword in the Storm says, I would be happy with a lower budget, longer season. I kind of agree with that. Gamer says, I loved Bounty Hunter Cam Mitchell. Never heard of you. That was when he was Mr. Shaft, wasn't he? When he was trying to buy some casa from the Lucian Alliance bunch. Sword says, I had those huge box sets that took up so much room. Yeah, the thing is, though, if you rip them all, it's not exactly piracy, is it? Because you own the physical media. So you get to do with what you want with it. You're backing it up, aren't you? You already own it. You own that sort of that privilege, don't you, to put it on your hard drives and whatnot. I mean, that's what I do with the majority of my stuff. I back it up, and then I can rewatch it at my leisure. And it's always good to do that and not have to rely on a streaming service. Because to be fair, Netflix, quality there, it's gone down the pan. Cartoon Man says, I don't know. Charity shops are getting clued up on how much certain things are worth. Yeah, but only if you get the right kind of people behind the tills. Sometimes you can barter with them. I use the rules of acquisition. If it's good enough for Quark, it's good enough for me. And there's always a bargain to be struck, and there's always a deal to be made, And small things coming, Great things come in small boxes, as Quark once said. Gamer says, wait. What was he claiming to be a bounty hunter? Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Mr. Shaft. Flavius X says, evening, Trev. Hail, chat. Nice of you to join us, mate. What's this? Let's see. Get rid of a ton of box sets, cost the space they took up. Well, yeah, I can agree with that. It swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's all right having this physical media, but what I tend to do, I get waterproof storage boxes. So I rip everything, and then I put the stuff either in the loft. I can always get my hands on it if I need to, or I've got storage space. I can always put stuff away, and for safekeeping and the like. But I must admit, I have downsized a lot of physical media. Not too much though. Definitely didn't get rid of any CDs. But the only problem is I've got like 20,000 CDs. Which is always great fun, but I've always got them. I don't chuck things away. I'm a bit of a hoarder at heart, to be fair. Just going through some of these other things in Joseph Malozzi's responses. Sarah says, you sound just as excited as the fans. I'm eager to see what you'll all create. I'm not sure if this was mentioned elsewhere, but do you have an estimated premiere date for the first episode? Joseph says at this point, I do not. Uh, Doug Deanna, $1 million copywriter, says, "Congratulations. Where will it be filmed? No idea at the moment." And you know something? I think it'll be British Columbia. They'll go back to where they did the original 3 seasons series, rather, where they did SG1, Universe, and Atlantis. I've got a feeling, I can't, is it Barnaby Studios or Burnaby Studios? I think that's what it is in British Columbia. So I think they'll do it there because, British Columbia is a good deal for Hollywood, to be fair. They can save a ton of cash. Yeah, in Vancouver, that's right. That's right, gamer. Yeah, but I'm sure it's Burnaby Studios or something like that. It even appeared in can you remember, was it the Wormhole Extreme episode with Marty? Do you remember that one? Actually, it does say Colonel on my uniform. Jeff Howard comes out with a great tweet to Joseph Malozzi. He says, "I don't envy your DMs today." He says 5 hours later, "And I'm honestly ready for bed." But a lot of people taking a lot of stock in Chevron 8. So it says, Chevron 8 obviously will take place in another galaxy. Good hint. Thanks, Joe. We're all excited. Not intended as a hint. There we go. It says here, what's this? Goldney says, "Hope we can get more behind the scenes stroke blooper stuff this time." He says he's posted quite a bit from the old shows. Joseph is a great resource for all things Stargate. But there's a lot of people just going absolutely wild. This is fantastic news. 14 years. We never got a conclusion to Stargate Universe, which is a bit sad, really, because just as it was finding its feet and it's getting into its stride, it was taken off. And I'm hoping, and I think this would make a really good T-shirt. Eli lives. And, they were doing the Flynn Lives ones for Tron Legacy and whatnot. I think that'd be a great T-shirt. Eli Wallace, he lived. Cartoon Man, what do you say there? Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, especially when it comes to our shows on VT. Yeah. Someone in the Storm says, "Hopefully not in front of a green screen." Well, a lot of it is sort of behind green screens and stuff these days. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? It's just a budget thing. People tend to make these productions now, and then they do them in front of a green screen. In fact, did anybody watch Sanctuary, the show with Amanda Tapping? And a lot of Stargate alumni at night was in that show too. But the first time it came out, it was done as like a web series. And it was clearly, done on green screen, a lot of Adobe After Effects and stuff like that. And then they remade it, and it was even better. But it was still, obviously, green screen stuff. But because it had a better budget, it just had that whole world of quality about it, a whole difference. If you watch the original, I mean, I have got the original web copies somewhere. I think I might have them on an old hard drive in the shed. I might have to look through it. But definitely, it was a fantastic, example of what could be done on a budget. To be fair. What's this? There we go. Oh, Gamer says, "I didn't like that show, Trev. Too much green screen." Yes, it was. Sword in the Storm says, "Is this going to be a reboot or a continuation?" Now, let's just go and have a look here. Because he does actually say it's, where we go. Here we go. Are you ready? See if this highlights. He says there, "And it's not a reboot or a wholesale reimagining that will wipe the slate clean on 17 seasons and some 350 hours of Stargate history. It's a new series that'll be the perfect jumping on point for first-time viewers, while at the same time honoring the existing past." So I don't think they're going to fuck about with the formula, to be fair. Eh, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. Sword says, "Yeah, I watched a few episodes of Sanctuary, couldn't get into it." A lot of people really didn't like it, to be fair. I tell you what would have been fun, Wormhole Extreme, if we'd have got a couple of seasons of that. Just just as a bit of an aside and a spoof, like an add-on to the mythology of Stargate. Sword in the Storm says, not even for Amanda Tapping. You couldn't get into it for Amanda Tapping. Sword in the Storm says, yeah, that's vague. It is a little bit vague, to be fair. But you've got, let's face it, you've got the whole stable of, the Stargate top brass. You've got Brad Wright. You've also, you've obviously got Martin Gero. You've got Joseph Malozzi. Did I see something about Robert Cooper? Was there any mention of Robert Cooper? I don't know. Yeah, but you've got Brad Wright there. Martin Gero, come on. You've got three of the best there. If anybody was to continue the series, they would be the perfect people to do it. So I'm kind of thinking now, will there be cameos from former SG members, whether it be Daniel or, probably mate. No, she might not be a colonel now. Wonder if she's General Carter. You never know. Will Jack O'Neill still be a part of it? I don't know. These are all questions. Daniel, yeah, you have to bring Daniel back. Crikey. It was nice to see the odd cameo in Stargate Universe, because Daniel was a badass, wasn't he, in that? He's like a super spy for the SGC. But it would be nice to see some, familiar faces coming back. What about Joe Flanagan's character? Oh, crikey, I forgot his name now. Gamer. You'll be able to remind me of this. What was his name? The guy in Stargate Atlantis. John Shepard, that was it, wasn't it? Colonel John Shepard. Sword in the Storm says, I'm not a big fan of the other Stargate shows. Atlantis had promise, but it didn't live up to it. It was all right up to a point, and then they brought a plank of wood into it called Jason Momoa. So it basically became Han and Chewie, didn't it? Even referred to him as Chewie on the show itself. Gamer says cameos depend on whether this is another galaxy like Ida. That might be worth exploring. Also, they have to account for 14 years of time passing. Do you know what I think would be a great idea? Yes, Colonel Shepard. Yes, I remembered. I know what would be a great idea. You know when the episode where the Ishen came to Earth and did that trick where they give everybody the cure to everything, but it makes them sterile. And Jack sent a piece of paper back to himself through the Stargate using a sunspot and a solar flare, didn't he? To send a message back. Yeah, 2010 it was called. That's right. He sent a message back to himself. Now, in that series, the Stargate had been revealed and it became like an airport. The SGC wasn't a thing anymore. In fact, wasn't it? They were doing tours around it, weren't they? And Daniel and Carter went for a tour around it, and this tour guide, she was correcting him. Oh, we called it the gate room. No, it was called the embarkation room. And he got some spotty little lass correcting him, and they were there day in and day out, which I thought was a nice touch, really. If you're watching this on the re-rub, tell me below what was your favourite episode of SG-1 Atlantis or Universe. And I know every show has a different theme and a different tone to it. SG-1 was just like the benchmark for everything, wasn't it, really? But it broke a lot of the rules of episodic TV. Jack was funny. And then in later episodes, as he got more responsibility as being a general, he changed. He started becoming a bit more serious. But in Atlantis, he was quite serious. And then in Universe, it was a bit of a prick, I thought. Fun Jack was gone. Fair enough, he was running Homeworld security. But characters change in time, obviously. But it would be nice to have a few cameos or a few callbacks, as long as it's not going to be all callbacks and member berries. You know, a series based on a franchise with as much rich history as what Stargate has. I think if the writing, the characters, and everything else, the set designs, the technology, the theme and the premise, if that's good enough, I think it can carry its own weight. Let's hope not mistakes, but the lessons learnt from Universe have been taken on board, you know, because I know it's never going to happen. I would have loved to have seen Universe at least get an ending. Sword says they built up the Wraith of this massive threat, then didn't know what to do with them. But they kicked their ass in the end, you know? What's this? SG-1, when it was on form, I probably preferred it to Star Trek. Yes, I agree with that, you know? Gamer says, almost in phases, Showtime phase versus Sci-Fi. Yeah, I get that. Sword says, I think a reboot with a few nods to the original could work better. Yeah, I think they're wanting to step away from that, though. They don't necessarily want to do that, you know? Why reinvent the wheel? The foundations are there, you know? The foundations are solid. They can build upon that. They can do something with it. They can fly, you know? If this show's given the chance, if Amazon are very lenient with them, and they kind of say, right, there's your budget. Whatever you have left over can roll on to a second season, maybe. But at the end of the day, the writing's got to be there. The quality's got to be there. I think the audience is waiting. Myself, as a true Stargate fan, 14 years has left me very hungry. You know? But hang on a minute. 14 years since the last episode, SGU's Gauntlet. I'm just trying to think when Arc of Truth and Continuum came out. But like I say, it gave it, SG-1 that closure it needed. You know? Ooh, this is interesting. Gamer says, this show could resolve SGU in part. I hope so. I really do. Because it would be nice to know if Eli made it. Sword says, there is a big audience that hasn't watched any Stargate, though. Yeah, there's potential there. Gamer says he's all in for that. I'm all in for it, And I understand your apprehension, Sword, It's safe to have that pessimism because how many times have we been lured in and then they've done the bait and switch and then we've come away with egg on our faces? Just look at Picard seasons 1 and 2. And then it took Terry Matalas to go in and basically dish up scoop after scoop of member berries just to get us back. You say, I've just learnt from experience not to get my hopes up. I'm ready to be proven wrong. Well, hopefully you can be proven wrong. Professor R2, welcome. He says, can't be all in. Amazon has a dreadful track record. This is true. I agree with that. But then again, like I said about 15 minutes ago, they've had so many misses. Isn't it about time that somebody broke the mold and gave Amazon a hit? Because they haven't really had that many hits in the sci-fi department. Download was probably the closest thing they've had to a hit. And that wasn't that good, to be fair. And it got 4 seasons. So there is potential here for this to go the distance. Sword in the Storm says, I might start a rewatch. Should be finished by the time it comes out. Yeah. What? All the lot, the movie, all the seasons of SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and then go on to SGU, and then Continuum and the Arc of Truth. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. It's just a short one. Let me know your thoughts below.